All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brittany Brathwaite. I am the current chair of the People Development Committee with the Caribbean Hotel Tourism Association. And it really is my honor this morning just to do a very brief opening so that we give most of the time to our moderator and panelist, who will delve into fundamental techniques and information on driving employee engagement. We often talk the talk of people being, the bedrock of what we do in tourism, not just in the region, but globally. But we really also have to walk that walk. And this is part of what we at CHTA have been doing via these webinars and the resources and tools that are being offered to you and pushed out through the People Development Committee. So this webinar is part of that larger ongoing commitment to advancing both talent development and engagement within the hospitality and tourism sector. And by participating today, we do hope that you'll gain exclusive insights and strategies as you work to implement your organization immediately. Now, I want to say a very special thank you to moderator Stacy Cox, CEO of Turks and Caicos Hotel and Tourism Association. Stacy is also a member of the People Development Committee. Welcome, Stacy. We also have today esteemed panelist, Julie Turney, owner of HR at Heart and an employee experience expert. Julie is well known globally. She's done TED Talks. She coined the term experience architect. Some people might say not, but really an expert at delving deep into the nuances that develop and sustain cultures that make people want to come and stay. So I really look forward to this as much as I hope you do. We encourage you to drop your questions in the chat. I'll be fielding in the background to ensure the panelist is aware. And if you have questions before the question and answer segment, feel free to raise your hand and we can field them as well. So over to you, Stacy.
Thank you so much, Brittany, and welcome to everyone there in virtual land. So today in CHTA Knowledge Webinar, Unlocking the Power of Engagement in Hospitality and Tourism. So employee engagement has become a real game changer in the hospitality and tourism industry. A highly engaged workforce just delivers better guest experience. It also leads to stronger retention, innovation, and ultimately business success. Today, we will explore how engagement directly connects to eNPS, how digitalization can enhance but not replace the human touch in this world of AI, and practical strategies of putting employees at the center of organizational success. I am so delighted to have join us today Julie Turney, who brings deep expertise in employee engagement strategies. So we'll unpack today some key insights and explore some case studies and leave you with some actionable ideas you can implement immediately in your organization. So Julie, let's just set some foundation here. Let's start with the basic. For those who are less familiar, like HR is not their wheelhouse, what exactly is eNPS and how does it measure engagement?
So thank you, Stacy, and hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. When we talk about the eNPS, we are talking about the Employee Net Promoter Score. And so basically what that is once you've completed the employee engagement survey, that score will tell you three things. It will tell you who are the promoters in your organization, who are the passives in your organization, and who are the detractors in your organization. So basically, we're talking about who are the people who are excited to be at work and who are going to cheerlead it on and so on. Who are the people who are there but not there, like they're there because they have to pay bills? And who are the people that are there because who are the people that are there because they've been here in this industry for such a long time, they're not happy, and they're going to let everyone know that they are not happy. And so I'm sure if you think about all three of those categories, you could think of someone in your organization who may fit one, if not all three of those categories. So that's what the eNPS is about. That's what it does for you. that is very important to the organization to make decisions about how they navigate talent in the organization. And also to ask those questions about, is it possible to turn passives into promoters? Is it possible to turn detractors into promoters? Or at least if we can't, then let's create a plan about how we either manage these people out of the organization or how we support these people to do their jobs more effectively.
Thanks for that, Julie. So here's a question. So, as an organization, what is the biggest risk if they don't track or prioritize eNPS?
Oh, okay. So let's take this back to the employee life cycle. If
Mm.
we're not tracking, especially those people who are our passives and our detractors, um, we're losing an opportunity to manage talent effectively, but we're also missing an opportunity to catch the point at which people and customer experience intersect and where there is a challenge that will happen with, will people come back to our resort? Will people come back to our property because they've had a good employee experience? Or will people move on and go to another resort because they've had a better employee experience? And so we really need to be conscious of how our employees are thinking and feeling, because ultimately that impacts how they treat our guests on property at any given point in time.
Great. So here's so given what you've just said, what tools do we use in order to measure this or that plays into boosting employee engagement without losing the all important human connection?
So employee engagement starts before the technology. Let's
Mm.
make that clear.
Right,
Before we start using
separation. Yes.
technology, employee engagement starts with the employee relationship between you and your managers, leaders in the organization, and how you interact with each other, how the organization, from a leadership and an HR perspective, builds products and tools to help you develop and grow in your careers, is the beginning of the employee experience. How you are recruited is part of the employee engagement experience. And so all of these things navigate your experience in the workplace. How you're hired, how you're promoted or how you're developed, how you grow, how you move through the organization or even out of the organization, how you move up, how you move laterally in the organization. Employee engagement will impact all of those things. The technology piece comes with your HR information system or your HR tech stack, which might be your HR information system and your employee engagement system. They may be two separate pieces of technology, but together they help you to determine what makes people happy and engaged at work. It is through those engagement surveys where you ask people, would you recommend our property to any other family member to work here or friend? Do you think you have the necessary tools and equipment to do your job effectively? Do you feel like your competencies and skills are being used effectively? Your HR information system is going to help you with that. Some HR information systems actually have the engagement tool already integrated into their systems. Some do not, and therefore you may have to purchase it separately. So that helps to build your tech stack.
So I love how you started with the engagement starts before technology, because a lot of times we go right into AI. You know, that's the big thing these days. Just everything is, let's see what AI says, let's see what ChatGPT says. But and I love that there are tools out there that persons can use in order to measure these things. But when we talk about the human connection, can you share some examples of engagement with connecting to the one-on-one employee before you get to the tool metrics?
Yes. So when you think about your relationship with your leader, leading a team, or you're an employee, or you're someone on a team, um, the the way that you work together, the way that you interact together is super critical. And I always emphasize as an HR professional talking to leaders and teams, you always want to make sure that you are creating a space where people feel like they are free to share their thoughts and ideas, whether they are good or bad. You want to make sure that people feel free to share concerns if they have any. And you want to make sure that people feel like they have opportunities to develop and grow. And when I think about um, organizations that do this really well, Brittany did not know I was going to call her name, but Brittany's group of properties that she works on, people sing the HR team's praises, they sing their leaders' praises. And one of the things I always, when I go on property, I always like to ask people, how long have you worked here? Would you ever consider moving to another resort? And when I hear people say, no matter what happens, this is where I'm going to stay. This is where I'm going to build my career. I have no intentions of leaving here right now. That tells me you're doing engagement right. That tells me that you're involving people in the process or in the tools that you've created. It helps people to feel like they understand the journey. The purpose of engagement is to help people understand the part that they play in helping the organization to achieve its goals. So engagement isn't something that is fluffy, feel good. It's something that is necessary to help everybody understand this is our organization, this is why it exists, this is how we make money, this is how we lose money, and this is how you impact that experience. A hotel that I always think of that does this really well is Four Seasons as well. And when you think about Four Seasons and the fact that they trust their employees to do what is right by the guest, whatever that means, and that they have that latitude, says that they care about the employee experience and them being able to have the freedom to make decisions that will make a guest happy, or accommodate their needs on property within reason. And I think that when properties do this, it really helps employees to feel valued. And then in itself, when the employee engagement survey time pops up, people don't feel like they're being forced to say, make sure that when you fill in that survey, you say that I'm a good leader, or you say that we're doing a good job. It's not about vanity metrics, but how people really think and feel. And that survey is going to show great things in terms of how many people participate and how people respond in the survey of itself. But all of that happens prior to in the way you engage and support employees. And I think, as I said, that I believe Brittany does a really great job of that for herself. And also in Four Seasons, I think they do a really great job of engaging their employees as well in that way.
Oh, fabulous. So I want to remind the audience just to continuously drop questions in. We're talking about engagement. So we want you to be as engaged as possible in this webinar. So, Julie, so a lot of times leaders have some leaders have tunnel vision about
Mm.
balancing the operational demands and still creating a culture within their organization or their organization. How can leaders balance both operational demands while creating a culture of engagement?
They go hand in hand though. So sometimes for me as an HR professional, I really struggle with the disconnect that people have to it. If you are a leader that creates a space that says we're all about the bottom line, you're creating a culture where people are going to only be focused on the bottom line. And as they're focused on the bottom line, you're going to see those passives and detractors show up more because they may not get that piece that says, I feel like my competencies and skills are recognized, or I feel like I get to utilize them effectively. um, or if it's just about doing this particular thing to help us achieve this particular thing. And this is the way we have always done it, is another thing that shows up in those kind of leaders. This is the way we've done it. This is the way I expect it to be done. There's no latitude for, there is no box for us to experiment. these things can really cause a serious challenge in how people feel about being engaged in the organization. When we think about operations, again, as I said, to be tied to engagement and building culture, everyone needs to feel like this is how we're all moving in the same direction. Because when you think about culture, culture is about the organization's DNA, right? It's how our attitudes and our behaviors collectively as individuals come together for a common purpose or a common good. And that's why I usually say, I think organizations, instead of saying that we're a family, say we're a community of people with shared goals and thoughts, right? About how we're going to achieve a specific thing. When everyone is on that journey and they understand the part that they play, whether they are a bellman or they're in housekeeping, how they play that part really matters. So a classic example, one of the stories that I love to tell when it comes to operations and culture, I remember an example that was given back in the 70s of John F. Kennedy taking a tour of NASA, and he came across a janitor, and he asked the janitor what he did. What do you do in this organization? And he said, the janitor, remember, he's the man sweeping, keeping the place clean. But his response was, I help to land people on the moon. Now, he's a janitor, but he understands the big purpose of the organization and the part that he plays in keeping NASA clean to help people land on the moon. And that's where you want everyone in the organization, whether it's food and beverage, no matter the department, housekeeping, no matter the department, everybody should know we are here for whatever reason to create great guest experience, to make people have to help people have memorable holidays, whatever it is that your goal is, or that thing that you have on the wall is, has to be tied to how you engage your employees and how you build that culture for your employees. Is beyond the numbers, beyond the what the expectation is or the end result is for the profits of the business. If everybody understands that and they're on that journey, the culture will speak to that. It will effervesce. It will be what you expect it to be.
I love that. I love that. And I guess what comes to mind when we're creating cultures in an environment is, the balancing of the boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Zs, and all those other acronyms behind a generation gap in one environment. How do we, for leaders, how do we manage that? Or for HR professionals, how do we put this all together to have the same mindset of the janitor, to know that we're all working for one common goal? Because I know that it's so difficult sometimes in a hospitality environment or any environment where you have all of these different generations in one property, and you're trying to get them to all have the janitor's mentality, but it's a struggle. Tell me some best practices that can be used.
So, one of the things, this is a really great question. Really great question. One of the things that I always encourage HR and leadership teams to foster is think about your team and who sits on it first and foremost, whether that's leadership or whatever team across the organization. When you think about that team, think about, do I have everyone's perspective on this team? Do I have a clear multi-generational representation on this team? If you have a team that is predominantly Gen Z, with maybe one or two Gen Xers, then you don't have a cross-functional team. If you have a team that is predominantly boomers and maybe a millennial leader, then you don't have a cross-functional team. And so as you recruit to fill positions, think about what you need. You need to have a clear understanding of each generation in your team. And so I always encourage people, where and if possible at all, try to build your team in a way that you have diversity of thought, because diversity of thought is very important. So you do want to make sure that you have people on your team. You have a little bit of every generation in the team. That gives you a better way of understanding and providing products and services that are going to be beneficial for the entire organization. And so I would say, think about your team. Who is on it? Is there full representation? And if there isn't, ask yourself, why isn't there full representation on a team? Did you come and find the team that way? And if the answer is yes, what could you do to change that up a little bit? Sometimes it might be possible to swap out um, uh, temporarily, maybe cross train and bring someone else onto the team. Sometimes people want to develop and grow. And that's why when it comes to engagement, it's important to always have conversations with your people. And so I would say try to build a cross multi-generational team. If you cannot do that, then at least think about how you could go about getting some of that expertise and knowledge on your team, either through small projects or maybe a little bit of cross training across departments. And if you can't do that, then maybe meetings would help in terms of have meeting with people who do have from different generations who do have ideas and they want to share them, and maybe you could do little focus groups to get some information from them as well to help you out. So there's always a way to connect the generations if you are serious about connecting and intentional about doing it, then you can get it done.
And I love that. I love what you said as it relates to, first of all, being intentional. We have to be intentional about the end game, about getting people to space, right, in a NASA environment. And I believe that creating small groups of a diversified group of individuals from the boomers to the Gen X or whatever that might be there, getting them in the room and understanding how each other think about getting people to the moon, right? And I love to about also the cross training and the diversifying of the team itself, because it creates an environment that allows your guests also to feel comfortable knowing that they are now able to communicate with a cross section of individuals within your establishment. So at this moment, we're going to pause for a bit, and Brittany has, you want to filter through at least 2 questions from the
Absolutely.
audience. Thanks,
So
Brittany.
we have some Q&As coming through in the back end, but we also have some in the chat. So I'll route Sandra's question first. So to what extent do good systems and processes affect employee morale and hence customer experience?
Good question, Sandra. So are we talking about the engagement system or the HR systems and how they impact the organization? Is that what we're asking, just to be clear? When we talk about good systems and processes from an HR perspective, yes?
I believe that may be her purview, but I mean, we can let her respond. I guess maybe we
Yes.
can give her like a multifaceted
Yes.
answer. So if we look at it from
Yes.
an HRIS
Mhm.
perspective and or
Yes.
an employee engagement.
Yes.
Oh, she said
So
customer service
customer
systems, actually.
service
Yeah.
systems.
Interesting.
Okay. That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Again, I think that it comes down to, are we one band, one sound? And in giving those different experiences for employees to work in the organization, are we taking the necessary feedback to ensure that they are able to give a good customer experience? So, for example, if you think about, okay, so recently I went to a resort, 2 weekends ago, I went to a resort, and my check-in experience was wonderful. So when we got there, we were directed to where to check in. We were asked to sit down. Someone came and asked us if we wanted a rum punch or a juice. We were told that we would just wait a few minutes and then someone would come to us to complete our check-in process. When we went to the desk to do our check-in, we were greeted with smiles. We gave our information. We were told that we needed to give what was required, and we had a great experiences. The side to that is clearly everyone understood what the process was. I didn't feel at any point in time like there was a disconnect between the moment that we arrived to the moment that we went to the check-in desk, and we received our bands for our rooms, and we were given explanations about the elevator. Like, I didn't feel there was a loophole in the experience. Um, and I think that when we have good systems in place and everybody understands what that process is, then ultimately it should create a good customer experience. That requires training, that requires knowledge sharing. And I think that once these things are done effectively, then you can clearly see that people do understand the process of giving good customer experience. Now, there was one part of this that I would say they would lose marks on for me. And that was they invited us at some point to go into this lounge where they call it like a rum lounge. So it has in the room, you have all of these different rums from all over the world. And then you have the barmen who are making the cocktails. So I think the connect is when you come in and you're checking in, they ask you if you want a rum punch or a juice. They go into this lounge and they bring them back out for you. But they gave my husband and I the opportunity to actually sit in the lounge. Now, when the young lady came to us and she said, well, these rums that you're seeing on the wall are rums from all over the world. They're listed by country and so on. Um, there were two rums that she could not call the name. And so that said to me, there needs to be a education of all of these different rums and all of these different countries so that people can say with confidence, oh, this rum is from Nicaragua or this rum is from El Salvador. And that was the only thing for me where I would say they may lose a little points there with me, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Once processes and systems are clear, then employees will be able to create good experiences. If the processes and systems are not clear, then they won't be able to create good experiences. So your training, how you develop, how you document and educate your staff is going to be very critical to ensuring that customer experience can be effective and efficient. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Julie. I would like to add from an operational perspective, sometimes I also find that we use our customer experience tools to navigate our sales and marketing strategies, and we have them feeding into the external output. So we will see what our Revenate scores look like, and everybody in here will know like Revenate or TripAdvisor. So we see what those amalgamated scores look like, and we have them feeding into our teams that are building content externally. But we're going to have feedback on what happened in food and beverage in the last week, and we're not going to be in real time curating activities and initiatives that seek to resolve the issues. We'll probably say to a leader, hey, your team member's name came up and they were rude to a guest, fix it. That's not a fix, right? What Julie's talking about here is strategy versus just real time speaking at and to people. You have to be very comprehensive in the way you go about one, using the information that comes to you and curating a strategy that fixes those issues in the long-term manner.
Yeah.
We have another two questions in the question and answer box. So the first one here is, how can leaders maintain morale from a genuine and authentic manner that speaks to individuals and not focused on management? I want to add just a little bit and I can hand over to Julie, but I will say that I do think if we want to talk about authentic and genuine, what I've found is You as an organization or you as a leader, whether HR is not your wheelhouse, you also have to be authentic and genuine and distinguish between holding pizza parties and addressing the issues that exist on the ground. So if you know people are asking questions about HR policies, they don't get information in real time, they don't have what they need that enhances their employee experience at a baseline perspective. I'm talking about even if they can't get a job letter. So if it takes 3 weeks to get a job letter, how are you fixing that? If it takes 2 weeks to get an answer on their accrued vacation, how are you fixing that? When we talk about building team morale from a genuine and authentic manner, and I'll let the employee experience expert speak, but from an operational perspective, I'll say to you, I think a lot of us need to address the issues that we know exist at a baseline, and then we can extrapolate genuine and authentic from our people, because sometimes we want our people to come into a pizza party and smile and laugh with us when we haven't answered their questions that have been pending in the question and answer box for the past 3 months. Over to Julie and to Stacy, because I think Stacy, from a secretariat perspective, it would be great to hear your insight on that as well.
Yeah. Stacy, you want
Julie
to go first?
And yeah.
So yeah, I think in keeping with what Brittany said, I think when you start to talk about leadership from a genuine and an authentic place, you have to question your genuineness and your authenticity. Do they even exist? I think the best leaders are the leaders who lead from behind. Now, when I say that, I mean you help your people up, and you think more about how can I create more leaders, not more me's, more leaders. And that only happens if you genuinely are interested in building skills, competencies, mindsets in the people that you lead. The best leaders know how to lead themselves. And as a result of knowing how to lead yourself, you then will intrinsically, effectively lead others. And so I think when you are talking about genuineness and authenticity, it comes from those places. So examples. I'm always, for me as a leader, I'm always talking to my team. I meet with my team every week, but my team sits and works all over the world. So for example, I'm usually based in Barbados, but I'm working from the UK. I have another team member who's based in Trinidad, is currently working in Antigua, and I have another team member who is working from Canada. That's how my team works. That we don't miss a beat because we're always talking to each other. We're always pouring into each other. As a leader, I will say, these are the projects that we have on hand. Who wants to chip in to work on these projects? Who has the time? Who has the bandwidth? What is the timeline? We agree on a timeline. So I think when it comes to your situation, how do you explain the data that you as a senior leader are expected to deliver on, report on? How do you educate your team as to what that data is and how it works? So I know you have lots of different acronyms. We have all the acronyms in the world in HR, but I never realized that the hospitality sector has acronyms ad nauseum, right? And do you take the time to explain that some of those acronyms and what they mean for your day-to-day business as a leader? The other thing that I think we don't do really well as leaders is ask for help. I think sometimes you think that because as a leader, you have to have all the answers, and you don't. And that's the whole purpose of having your multi-generational teams and the cross functionality of diversity of thought, so that when you do have a problem, you can say, here's a problem I have. That's what builds the genuineness and authenticity. That's when a team member looks at you and says, hey, I could see you really are trying to be a good leader. I want to give you an example. So there's a hotel chain that I support in Barbados. And recently, their HR director had to make a very critical decision about letting someone go on her team. Devastating, because as HR professionals, we pride ourselves in hiring great talent. But the truth of the matter is, people will be people, things will go wrong. And she had to make a very conscious decision about letting that team member go. The reason not only was the person not doing the work, but they were also building some toxicity in the team that was causing some anxiety and frustration for the team. As a leader, for her to put her hand up and say, I'm going to let my right hand go and I'm going to support my team going forward. The moment I find out this isn't right and I pull my investigation and I decide we're going to let this team member go, when I went to do the therapy session with the team, at the end of it, everyone on that team said, we know that we have a great HR director who actually cares about this team and is willing to let someone go, even though they're a senior leader, someone she relied on heavily, who just was not bringing good morale to the team, who was not authentic, who was not genuine, and therefore she let that person go. And that's where you build the trust, the authenticity, the leadership muscle of it's not just about how do we achieve things, but if there are poor behaviors, poor performance on the team, how do we address that so that the team feels like they're being seen and they're being heard? And so I think all of this drives that when we talk about enhancing the employee experience, when they see a leader who is also walking the talk and is willing to let people go if they're not in keeping with the values and the principles, who is willing to lead and share, be open, who is willing to say when they have challenges and be vulnerable in that way. All of those things enhance the employee experience because they know people know they have a leader that sees them and trusts them and believes in them. I know that was long-winded, but
So
I'm
I'm
very
gonna just
passionate
say,
about this.
I'm just gonna say whatever what she just said, 100%. But two things that I would take away from that, and or not take away, but add to, is that in a leadership position as I have, the level of vulnerability with your employees is just so critical, and also them buying into the vision. So I am not everything that I do, I share with my employees. This is the vision. This is how I think we're going to get there. And what are your thoughts? Because I love to be challenged as a leader. I don't want yes, ma'am, and yes, sir persons on my team. I want you to say why you think this wouldn't work and why you think this would work. So giving a safe space for individuals to share their opinions and saying, and I love when people say, no, Stacy, that don't make sense. And this is why. Because don't just tell me it doesn't make sense. And I believe that as a leader, that shows our level of vulnerability in our leadership role when A, we lean on our team in order to share, and B, we're vulnerable to know that I don't have all the answers. Let's work this together as a team. And what it does, it strengthens the bond within your environment, right? And within your leaders. And then your leaders take this and trickle it down to your line employees. So now you're creating this culture of we trust in our leaders, we trust in our managers, and then you would find then that your team would do whatever it takes in order to make the organization look good. In some cases, I have had to, because people have bought into the vision, they want to be a part of whatever the vision is, you have to sometimes say, stop. Go home today. You're not feeling well, because people are now putting 100% into everything that you've sold them or shown them as a leader.
Mhm, mhm. I
So
absolutely agree.
I have another question because time is zooming by. It always does
It
when you're
has.
having fun.
Yep.
So how can emotional and social intelligence be effectively applied within a small core team? comprising individuals and multiple subcontractors. This is very interesting because this is a real reality in hospitality, yeah? And this is also compounded by a multi-generational workforce, including baby boomers, Gen Xers, and millennials. So I'm just going to run that from the top. How can emotional and social intelligence be effectively applied within a small core team comprising 3 individuals and multiple subcontractors with that multi-generational makeup?
Julie?
Number one, maybe we need to have a workshop in emotional intelligence. Number two, I think that conversations, what are the team norms, is something that people fail to establish. I think as you're building a team, it is very important for you to establish what are the norms of the team. In other words, how at our best, what can we expect from each other? At our worst, what can we expect from each other? What are the things that are non-negotiable for us? We go into an organization, we get hired, but then even I think this is something that we're very guilty of as leaders, as not taking a moment to say, okay, we have this new member on our team, and we go, let's go out for drinks or let's go out for dinner. But we don't have those conversations about this is who our team is at its core right now. And these are the values that are in our team at this moment. What does that look like for you? And then at your best, how do you show up? At your worst, how do you show up? The other thing that I always think is important to share from an emotional intelligence perspective is you got to know your people. But knowing your people does not necessarily mean that you have to know um, if Brittany and her man break up. You don't need to know that, right? You don't need, yes, you may know the basics of the family core. You don't have to go to Brittany's house for dinner once a week, right? In order to say this is who we are as a team. So I think that there are certain lines that get blurred over time because as leaders, so I'm going to add another piece of training. So yes, emotional intelligence training, but also leadership training. Because sometimes as you develop employees in the organization, let's say someone started in housekeeping, now they're in engineering, and now they're leading a team, or they're leading housekeeping, or they're leading food and beverage, but they started in the bottom of food and beverage. What happens is because we started in the bottom, we're all friends. And now I'm in leadership. The lines are so blurred, I don't know how to deal with you because I'm leading now, but I don't know how to separate that we were friends and I used to be at your house and we drink together, right? Because let's face it, a lot of our islands as Caribbean people, we lime a lot. But the lines get blurred. And so when we're leading people and we have to discipline people or we have to train, mentor, whatever, the lines get blurred. So I would say that it's really important to recognize that as you grow and as you expand, that you ensure that you learn how to start to compartmentalize certain things, so that when you become a leader, that your team isn't saying, "Well, she started with us, and now look at her, and now she want to play, she better than us," you know. And so all of those things come into play. I would also say from a social perspective, we all come from islands, and the island mentality is the island mentality is the island mentality, no matter where you go. And so I think that it is important for us to understand which parts of this are actually tied to our culture as Arubans or as Turks and Caicos, as Barbadians or Bajans, as Jamaicans, as Trinis, right? That it's important we understand the social elements of who we are versus our own socialization in our families, because we bring our entire human to work and all of those things come to play. So I would say just think about how you navigate those things. But we might need some emotional intelligence training, which I do that training. I also do leadership development training as well. So I think that as you're building those things, it's important to have them in play. But establishing your team norms as a team, because team cultures are different to organizational culture, but every team has its own culture and its own framework. just by who you are and who makes up the team, then expands to how the entire organizational culture builds its DNA. So just be conscious of those things.
I again agree with Julie and everything that she said there. And just some examples as, a former general manager of multiple properties. Um, Dealing with housekeeping sometime is one of your biggest challenges, right? And it is pretty much the foundation of your establishment. So when you talk about emotional intelligence and dealing with those individuals in the housekeeping department, it's, I would go every morning pretty much in a room that a housekeeper is in and speak with them about, let's make this bed together. What do you think this looks like? Let's try this. And those are the things that we need to do to emotionally connect with our staff. And just be one of them and have them also appreciate the fact that, yes, you are indeed the leader. When my pool and beach guys, I would take off my heels and walk the beach with them because they need to see that leadership is in action, and emotionally, I am here with you and I will support exactly what the goal of the organization, whatever it will take. That is not illegal or immoral. Then on the flip side of that, I've also had employee who, it was last night we went to drinks and the next morning, this is your third or fourth time coming in late. And I have indeed had to write that individual up. Of course, that didn't go well with her, but by the end of a shift, I was just like, this is not personal. This is business. We can kiki together. But at the end of the day, there's an opportunity, we all need to get the job done and continue with the goal of NASA, right? So we just need to connect with our employees at every level that we can without sometimes compromising the relationship or the position that we're in as leaders. So I think there was one.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just searching. I think we've answered everything in the Q&A box for sure.
I think there was one that the one that spoke to, are there best practices tips for ways to gather feedback?
Yeah, that was further up. Yes, I think that's our last outstanding one before we wrap.
So best practices for gathering feedback. Nothing beats one-on-one as a leader, getting one-on-one feedback from your teams. In the performance management process, you do your reviews. Please don't tell me you all do them annually. I hope you do them quarterly at least. But as you're having continuous conversations, that's a great way to get feedback outside of your employee engagement survey. You're also pulling feedback from your exit interviews when people leave. That's another way that you get feedback. But how about if you also did stay interviews, where you're asking people, what is keeping you here? And what are you enjoying most about the work that you're doing right now? And a stay interview can take 10, 15 minutes, just to ask people those simple questions. And I think we are always on the reactive side versus the proactive side of the people experience process or the people experience system. But if you create a space where you are asking like stay interviews, if you are having regular continuous conversations, if you're thinking about rolling out something, then I always think focus groups are very helpful where you bring a cross section of people together and get their feedback on things. That's another way that you could do it. I also love there's a system that the government of the Cayman Islands has in place. So, like when you go to the airport, or I want to say the airport, like if you go to the airport in the US, you'll see this little kiosk in the bathroom with these different a smiley face, a yellow face, and a red face. I also think that if you had those like in your staff areas, whether it's in the kitchen, like in the staff lunchroom or in a changing area, where people could share their feedback on what their experience was like for the day, is a great way to capture data on how people are thinking and feeling about their interactions with the business in the moment. strategically placed across the property for employees just to give their own feedback on the experiences that they're having. I think maybe those little kiosks will be super helpful. The government of the Cayman Islands introduced them after they realized that their customer experience numbers were in like the 20 percentile across their public sector. With over 70,000 people in population, the feedback was over 1 million. That speaks volumes to how people were thinking and feeling about the public service that they were receiving. And now they've been able to turn that around, and their customer service experience ratings are now in the 90 percentile because they've been able to take that feedback and turn it around. And those are just practical ways that you could do that. 3 things.
I love all of that. And I love the little smiley face thing that you see about. Those can definitely, I mean, that's a low-hanging fruit, right? So we've been warned. We have 5 minutes to go. We'll take one more question with a short answer from Julie. Any more questions?
I do have one short one. So given the high
Short
turnover
one.
rate in hospitality, how would you approach managing employee retention?
So, sorry, say that again.
Given the high
the
turnover rate in hospitality, how would you approach managing employee retention? So it's a short one, but it's a big one. So we could probably handle
Yeah,
a very small piece of this, but we
I feel like
certainly
that
are
could
going
be
to
a
have
whole
other
workshop.
webinars. Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
I feel
Yes.
that could be a whole other webinar because it varies. So, like high turnover in Turks and Caicos, is because a lot of times it's hard to find the talent for certain positions. A lot of times you have to end up hiring expats. Then there's no cross training to build up local talent. So I think you have to look at the systems that you have placed, and you have to look at the causes. They could vary, and then be able to build systems that would help you to develop retention. And also because again, islands, different hotels, some of them pay differently. Some hotels give employees service charge, some don't. So it depends. People go where the money is, right? And also when you think about the cost of living in a country and those kind of things, there are a lot of different factors that could come into play. And so I think that as you think about retention, it is important to think about your external and economic factors, and then also think about the root causes of why people are leaving, which is going to be either in your exit interview, if people actually do the exit interview, and then being able to pull that information to help you develop ways that you can retain talent better. And also, again, like in your recruitment as well.
Excellent. I absolutely love it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Today really reminded us that true engagement comes from a diverse team and a willingness to challenge the mindset of this is how we always have done it, and ensuring process and systems are clear so employees can thrive. One powerful tool leaders can use is the stay interview. I absolutely love that. Asking employees why they choose to stay and what would make them leave. When we listen, act, and adapt, we not only boost eNPS, but also build strong, more resilient organizations. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's continue to unlocking the power of engagement in hospitality and tourism. Over to you, Brittany.
Thank you so much once again, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this morning. That hour flew by. Thank you also specifically for your participation. The questions were unending. At the last moment, we had like 3 coming in the back end, so that was lovely. I just at this juncture want to remind you, that CHTA, as part of what it's doing comprehensively, is putting on these types of webinars to ensure that your wheelhouse, whether it's HR, whether it's sales and marketing, has what it needs to be successful. On that note, I'll remind you of the upcoming webinar, again, navigating the current digital transformation in hotel technologies. That's happening on August 26th. You can follow the link that's going to be dropped into the wider chat box by Madeline. And if interested, you can certainly register for that webinar. The People Development Committee will also have upcoming webinars. We are going to be reconstituting the digitization and AI focus webinar, and that hopefully will happen in October. So look out for the people development specific initiatives if we have HR professionals here or persons interested in those spaces, but certainly keep your eyes peeled as well for the CHTA specific initiatives and activities. We cannot thank you enough for the time spent with us this morning. I've actually just dropped the link in the chat, so you can register if you wish to for the webinar. You can also connect with Julie on LinkedIn. You can connect with myself on LinkedIn. You can connect with Stacy, our moderator this morning, who holds a ton of knowledge as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of CHTA for your time. Julie and Stacy, we could not have done this without you. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise this morning. Thank you, ladies, and have a wonderful remainder of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.